My CEO whispered, "Take me home, or you're fired," in a crowded Chicago bar, and I thought it was a threat. But her fingers were shaking against my wrist. Her voice broke like glass. And the man watching us from across the room wore a smile that made my blood freeze. In that moment, I realized the most powerful woman I knew wasn't giving orders. She was begging for her life. This is the story of how a fake relationship became the most dangerous truth I ever lived. How a woman who built an empire from steel learned to be soft again. And how sometimes saving someone means risking everything you worked for. If you've ever wondered what happens when power meets vulnerability, when protection becomes love, stay with me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because this story goes places you won't expect. Let me back up 12 hours before that moment. Before the trembling hand. Before the whispered threat that wasn't a threat at all. Friday morning started like every other morning in my 27 years of trying to matter. The L train smelled like wet wool and someone's aggressive cologne. My reflection in the window showed a guy in a decent suit from Marshall's carrying a portfolio that weighed more than my confidence. I was Ethan Brooks, Jr. Creative at Vale & Company, one of Chicago's top branding agencies. Which meant I spent most days watching my ideas die in conference rooms, while senior people took credit for the ones that survived. My roommate Jay said I was married to rejection. He wasn't wrong. But every morning, I still got on that train, still walked into that glass tower on Wacker Drive, still believed that one day someone would actually listen. The office occupied 3 floors of premium real estate with views of the Chicago River. Everything was white and chrome and aggressively minimalist, like the space itself was too important for warmth. The creatives sat in an open floor plan that was supposed to foster collaboration, but mostly just meant everyone could watch you fail in real time. Miranda Vale's office was on the top floor. Corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows. You could see her up there sometimes standing at the glass like she owned the skyline. Which, in a way, she did. Vale & Company was her name on the door, her vision in every pitch, her reputation staked on every campaign. She'd built this place from nothing when she was 32, back when the industry was even more brutal to women than it is now. 7 years later, she was legendary. We called her the Steel Queen, though never to her face. She had this way of walking into a room that made grown men check their ties. Her suits were tailored like armor. Her hair always pulled back so tight it could give you a tension headache just looking at it. And her eyes, this sharp gray blue, that seemed to calculate your net worth and find you wanting in the same glance. I'd been working there 11 months. Miranda Vale had spoken directly to me exactly 4 times. 3 of those times she'd said no to my pitch ideas. The 4th time she'd said no, and then asked if I'd actually researched the client before wasting her time. That was 3 months ago. I still woke up sweating about it sometimes. Friday's pitch was for a downtown hotel chain trying to rebrand as boutique. I'd worked on it for 2 weeks, staying late, refining the concept until my eyes burned. The idea was good. I knew it was good. Something about Chicago's architecture as identity, the way buildings hold stories. The conference room was full. 15 people pretending to pay attention while actually checking their phones under the table. I stood at the front with my deck loaded, palms sweating through my button-down. Miranda walked in last. She always did. The room straightened unconsciously like students when the principal arrives. She sat at the head of the table, crossed her legs, and looked at me with an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. I started talking. Showed the concepts, explained the strategy. Watched her face for any flicker of reaction. Nothing. When I finished, she let the silence stretch until it became physically uncomfortable. Then she leaned forward slightly, folded her hands on the table, and spoke in that cool, measured voice that could make a compliment sound like a threat. Just no, nothing else. Just that one word delivered like a scalpel. Someone coughed. The senior art director, Marcus, jumped in with a variation on my idea that was essentially the same concept with worse execution. Miranda listened to him for 30 seconds, before cutting him off mid-sentence. That's what Ethan just presented with different fonts. Next. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt like I'd just watched her break someone's nose while defending me, and somehow I was still the one bleeding. The meeting ended. People filed out. I gathered my things slowly, trying to look like I wasn't devastated. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder as he passed. "Tough room, Brooks. Maybe next time." I wanted to throw my laptop through the window. By 5:30, the office had mostly emptied for the weekend. Chicago in January gets dark early, and the temperature drops like the city's trying to remind you that survival here isn't guaranteed. Jace texted asking if I wanted to grab a drink at this bar in River North, the kind of place where young professionals go to pretend they're not slowly dying inside. I almost said no. Then I thought about going home to our apartment in Logan Square, microwaving something sad and staring at my laptop trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. The bar was better. Barely. It was one of those places with exposed brick and industrial lighting packed shoulder to shoulder with people in expensive coats pretending they didn't care about being seen. The noise level was just below a concert, everyone talking over everyone else. Jace was already 3 drinks in and holding court with some guys from his finance job. I got a whiskey and tried to care about their conversation about market fluctuations. My mind kept cycling back to that conference room. Miranda's face. The word no delivered like a diagnosis. Jace caught my expression and leaned in half drunk and fully obnoxious. Let me guess. Miranda Vale took one look at your soul and turned it into compost. She didn't even blink, just no, like it was a reflex. He laughed, not meanly. You know what your problem is. You still think talent matters. The city doesn't run on talent. It runs on connections and convenience. You're convenient to ignore. That stung because it was true. I was mid-response when the air in the room changed. It's hard to explain if you've never felt it. Like a temperature drop that has nothing to do with the door opening. People shifted without knowing why, creating space bodies moving on instinct. Then I saw her, Miranda Vale. In this bar, on a Friday night, without the armor. Her hair had come loose from whatever tight bun she'd worn to the office. One pin hung at an angle like she'd tried to fix it with shaking hands and given up. Her blazer, always perfectly pressed, was buttoned wrong. One side higher than the other, and her mascara, usually invisible beneath that polished exterior, had smudged faintly at the corners like she'd been rubbing her eyes. She looked human. Worse than human. She looked hunted. Our eyes met across the room. I saw something flicker in her face. Recognition. Then something else. Something that made my stomach drop. Desperation. She moved fast. Not the measured CEO walk I'd seen 1,000 times. This was urgent, almost stumbling. She pushed through people who parted without understanding why, and then she was standing in front of me close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something expensive and floral that I'd only ever caught in elevators or when she walked past my desk. Her hand clamped around my wrist. Hard. Her fingers were ice cold. I opened my mouth to ask if she was okay, but she leaned in before I could speak. Her lips were right next to my ear. Close enough that I felt her breath. "Take me home or you're fired." The words punched through the bar noise like a gunshot in my head. My brain immediately went to every HR nightmare, every power dynamic lecture, every story about executives abusing their position. This was it. This was the moment where my career ended, and maybe my life got destroyed in the process. But her voice, God, her voice, it wasn't commanding, it wasn't cold, it was breaking. The last word came out like she was holding herself together with spit and desperation. And her hand was shaking against my pulse. I looked at her face. Really looked. The Steel Queen mask was cracked all the way through. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated. Her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. She looked like someone trying not to drown. "Don't turn around, put your arm around me, now." It wasn't a command, it was a plea. Every instinct screamed at me to ask questions first. to understand what was happening before I got involved. But something deeper than instinct kicked in. Maybe it was the way her fingers dug into my wrist like I was the only solid thing in the room. Maybe it was that I'd spent 11 months watching her be untouchable, and seeing her like this felt like witnessing something sacred and terrible. My eyes flicked past her shoulder, just for a second. Across the bar, near the windows, a man stood watching us. Tall, tailored coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dark hair styled in that effortless way that takes an hour and a professional. He was handsome in the way that men who've never been told no are handsome. Confident. Satisfied. He was smiling. Not friendly, not warm. The smile of someone who'd placed a bet and was watching it pay off in real time. Miranda's grip tightened on my wrist until I felt my pulse hammering against her thumb. Please. That word. That single word from the woman who'd said no to me without blinking. Who could end careers with a raised eyebrow. Who I'd never heard use the word please in any context ever. I made a decision that would change everything. I stood, wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulled her close like she was mine and not my untouchable CEO. Like this was normal, like I brought her to bars on Friday nights and held her like this all the time. Her body went rigid for half a second. Then she exhaled against my chest like she'd been holding her breath underwater. Okay, I've got you. We started walking. I kept my arm around her, kept my pace steady even though my heart was trying to escape my rib cage. The man by the windows watched us leave. That smile never wavered. The Chicago night hit us like a fist. January wind off the lake, brutal and clean. Miranda's breath came out in visible clouds. She pulled away from me, slightly putting space between us now that we were outside. For a moment, she just stood there on the sidewalk, people streaming past, traffic rushing by on the street. She looked lost. Then she started reconstructing herself in real time. Straightened her spine. Smoothed her blazer. Reset her face into something harder. When she spoke, her voice had most of its steel back. This conversation didn't happen. I should have agreed. Should have nodded and walked away and pretended I'd never seen Miranda Vale vulnerable. But I'd already made one bad decision tonight. Might as well commit. That guy, he looked like he wanted to hurt you. Something cracked in her expression. Just for a second. Pain leaked through the gaps before she could seal them. He already did. 3 words. Barely audible. And somehow worse than anything else that had happened. She turned to leave. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk fast and decisive like she was trying to outrun herself. Like if she walked fast enough she could leave this version of herself behind on a Friday night in River North. I called after her. Didn't think about it, just did it. Are you okay? She stopped, didn't turn around, just stopped walking like the question had physically caught her. The most terrifying thing wasn't her silence. It wasn't the way her shoulders were still rigid with that CEO posture. It was what she said next. Quiet. Honest. Like the truth had slipped out before she could stop it. I don't know. Then she was gone. Disappeared into the flow of people and city lights and Friday night chaos. I stood there on the sidewalk watching her go, whiskey still warm in my blood brain, trying to process what had just happened. Jace found me standing there 5 minutes later. Dude, where'd you go? Did you just leave with someone? I didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know if I'd just helped someone or made everything exponentially worse. The weekend passed in a blur of second guessing. I kept my phone close, half expecting a call from HR. Or a lawyer. Or campus security escorting me out of my apartment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The trembling fingers, the broken pleas. I told myself to forget it. To treat Friday night like a fever dream and move on. Monday, I'd go back to my desk and my dying pitch ideas and the comfortable invisibility of being junior creative nobody. Except Monday morning, sitting at my desk with bad coffee and worse anxiety, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. 3 sentences that made my stomach drop all over again. My office. Now MV. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending to my own execution. Every floor dinged past was another chance to turn around to claim sudden illness to flee the building and maybe the city entirely. But my legs kept moving, carrying me toward whatever waited in that corner office. Miranda's assistant wasn't at her desk. The whole top floor felt emptier than usual, like people had been strategically cleared out. I knocked on the glass door, even though I could see her through it, standing at those massive windows with her back to me. "Come in." Her office was exactly what you'd expect. Glass and steel and power. A desk that could double as a dining table. Chairs that cost more than my car. Art on the walls that I didn't understand but knew I should pretend to appreciate. And the view. God, the view. The entire Chicago skyline spread out like she'd purchased it for decoration. Miranda turned from the windows. She was perfect again. Hair pulled back in that severe bun. Makeup flawless. Suit pressed and tailored. Voice completely level. If I hadn't seen her Friday night, I would never believe this was the same woman who'd whispered please with a breaking voice. "Close the door." I did. The click felt final. She didn't ask me to sit. We stood there in that massive office, with the city at our backs, and for a long moment she just looked at me. Studying. Calculating. Running some internal cost-benefit analysis I wasn't privy to. Then she moved to her desk and slid a document across the surface toward me. A formal apology. In writing. Acknowledgement of inappropriate conduct. A guarantee of non-retaliation. And an offer. Transfer to any department you choose. A raise. Your pick of projects. Whatever you need to feel safe continuing to work here. I looked at the document, didn't touch it. My hands stayed at my sides. You weren't trying to abuse power. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You were scared. That landed. I watched it hit her. Watched her breath catch for just a fraction of a second. She recovered fast, but I'd seen it. The crack in the armor. She turned back to the windows like she couldn't have this conversation while looking at me. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman at war with herself. His name is Blaine Mercer. The way she said the name, like it tasted wrong, like speaking it out loud gave it power she didn't want to surrender. We were engaged. The words came slowly measured like she was doling out classified information. But once she started, something shifted. Maybe it was easier to confess to glass and skyline than to another human face. They'd met at a charity gala 5 years ago. He was investment banking old money, the kind of connections that opened doors before you even knocked. Charming in that effortless way that came from never having to try. He'd pursued her hard. Flowers, surprise trips, public declarations. He made her feel chosen in a way she hadn't realized she'd been starving for. The proposal was on a yacht off Key Biscayne. The ring was the kind that made headlines. He posted it on social media before she'd even finished crying happy tears. She should have seen it then. Should have noticed that he was staging their love for an audience. The cracks showed slowly. He started commenting on her work schedule. How she was always busy. Always choosing the company over him. He'd say it playfully at first, just jokes, but the jokes got sharper. Started happening in front of their friends. Your fiancé is married to her work, not to me. Good thing I'm patient. Then came the women. First one, then another. Then more. Each time he'd have an explanation. Misunderstanding. She was just a friend. You're being paranoid. You work too much, you don't make time for us. What did you expect? He was good at it. The gaslighting. Making her question her own reality. Making her believe she was the problem. That if she were softer, more available, more feminine, he wouldn't need to look elsewhere. She ended it 9 months ago. Returned the ring. Moved out of the penthouse they'd shared. Tried to reclaim her life. But Blaine didn't accept endings he hadn't written. He started showing up. Her favorite restaurant, her gym, that coffee shop on her route to work. Always with a new woman. always younger than Miranda, always making sure she saw them. The final escalation started 3 months ago. He began attending industry events he had no business being at. Galas, conferences, networking dinners. He'd position himself in her line of sight, lean close to whatever date he'd brought, make sure Miranda watched them touch. It was strategic torture. Public humiliation disguised as coincidence. Friday night wasn't the first time. It was just the first time I broke. She stopped talking. The silence filled the office like water rising. I processed what she'd told me. Tried to fit this story with the woman I'd worked for. The steel queen who could end meetings with an eyebrow, who I'd never seen flinch. That's harassment. You could report him, get a restraining order. She laughed. It was bitter. You think I haven't tried. His lawyers are better. His family has connections to half the judges in Cook County. And every time I push back, every time I try to make it stop, he escalates. The last time I threatened legal action, he started calling clients. Nothing concrete, just friendly conversation. Mentioning he used to know me, wondering if I was stable, if the pressure was getting to me. I understood then. The full scope. This wasn't just an ex who couldn't move on. This was a man weaponizing reputation, using the very success she'd built as ammunition against her. So, Friday when he showed up at that bar, when he cornered me at the coat check and whispered that I looked desperate and alone, I panicked. I saw you. I knew grabbing you was wrong. Knew I was putting you in an impossible position. But in that moment, you were the only escape I could see. She finally turned from the window, looked at me straight on. Her eyes were clear, but there was something raw in them. Something that hadn't been there before Friday night. I'm sorry, genuinely. You deserved better than being used as a human shield. Take the transfer, take the raise. Or, if you want to leave entirely, I'll write you a reference that will open any door in this city. I should have taken it. Should have grabbed that document and run. Extracted myself from this situation before it swallowed me whole. But I kept thinking about her hand shaking against my wrist. The broken please. That man's satisfied smile. And I kept thinking about something else. Something that had been bothering me since Friday. You're telling me this man has been systematically harassing you for 9 months. Showing up everywhere. Making your life hell. And your solution is to just endure it, to keep being afraid. Her spine straightened. Defense mechanisms activating. What would you suggest? Starting a public war with a man who has infinite resources and no conscience. No, I'd suggest taking away his weapon. She gave me that look. The CEO look that had ended careers. Go on. Here's what I knew about Miranda Vale from 11 months of working under her. She was brilliant, strategic. She thought 3 moves ahead in every situation. And right now, she was so deep in survival mode that she couldn't see the obvious play. I leaned against her desk. Not sitting. Not standing at attention. Somewhere in between. Equal footing. He wins because you're alone. Because every time he shows up with another woman, you're by yourself. It reinforces his narrative. That you're cold, unlovable, married to work. That he left you, not the other way around. I could see her processing. Her mind already running scenarios. So, would I hire an escort? Show up with some actor on my arm? That's pathetic. No, that's giving him what he wants, proof you're faking it. Proof you're desperate enough to pay for company. Then what? I took a breath. Committed to the idea, even as part of my brain screamed that this was insane. Let me do it. Not as someone you hired. Not as someone you coerced. Ask me as a favor, as a friend. Let me be your very public, very real-looking boyfriend for however long it takes to make him move on. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the heating system clicking through the vents. Miranda stared at me like I'd suggested we rob a bank together. You cannot be serious. I'm completely serious. Think about it. I already work here. There's built-in plausibility. Late nights at the office, shared projects, we can build a story that makes sense. And when he sees you happy, sees you choosing someone, sees that you've moved on so completely you don't even register his presence anymore, he loses his power. She shook her head, started pacing. Her heels clicked against the floor in that decisive rhythm that usually preceded someone getting fired. This is absurd, the risk, the optics. If anyone found out it was fake, it would destroy my credibility. And yours. We'd both be done, only if we get caught. And we won't get caught if we do it right. If we actually commit. She stopped pacing, looked at me hard. Why would you do this? You barely know me. I've shot down your ideas. I've been cold to you. Why would you risk your career for this? I thought about lying, about giving her some strategic answer that made me sound calculating and smart. But I'd already decided to be honest tonight. Might as well go all in. Because Friday night I saw you human. Saw you terrified. And that guy Blaine, he doesn't get to win. He doesn't get to make you afraid in your own city. You shouldn't have to survive him alone. Something shifted in her expression. Not softness exactly, but recognition. Like she was seeing me as a person for the first time instead of just junior creative number 3. This is a terrible idea. Probably. It would be complicated. Messy. One wrong move and we'd both pay for it. True. She crossed her arms. Studied me with those calculating eyes. I could see her running probability matrices in her head. Risk versus reward. Short term versus long term. If we do this, there are conditions. I waited. Temporary. We have an exit strategy from day 1. The second it's done its job, we end it cleanly. Second, absolute discretion. No one can know it's arranged. Not your friends, not your family. It has to be real to everyone except us. Third, you can walk away anytime. No retaliation, no questions. You start feeling uncomfortable, you say the word, and we're done. And fourth, she stepped closer. Close enough that I had to look up slightly to meet her eyes. Close enough that I could smell that expensive perfume again. No ulterior motives. You don't get to use this for favors, for promotions, for access. This is a favor, nothing more. If I sense for 1 second you're trying to leverage this situation for personal gain, I will end you professionally. Am I clear? Crystal. She extended her hand. Not for a handshake. For something more binding. A contract made of trust and desperation, and maybe a little bit of insanity. Then we do this right. We sell it completely. No half measures. I took her hand. Her palm was cool and steady. The trembling from Friday was gone. This was Miranda Vale, the CEO, making a deal. Clinical. Professional. No ulterior motives. Just decency. And maybe a chance to get back at a guy who really deserves it. Something that might have been a smile flickered at the corner of her mouth. Barely there. Gone in a second. You have no idea what you're agreeing to. Neither do you. She didn't let go of my hand right away. We stood there in that moment, 2 people about to step off a cliff together, hoping one of us knew how to fly. When she finally released my hand, she moved back to her desk. All business now. Pulled out her phone, started typing. I need time to think through the logistics, parameters. Strategy, we do this wrong, we both burn. I'll message you tonight with details. She looked up from her phone. Met my eyes one more time. And for just a second, the mask slipped. I saw gratitude there, real and raw and a little bit scared. Thank you. I nodded, turned to leave. My hand was on the door when her voice stopped me. Ethan. I looked back. Don't tell anyone about Friday. About what happened at the bar. That story stays between us. I understood. She needed to control the narrative. Needed this to look like her choice, not her panic. No one will hear it from me. I left her office feeling like I'd just signed a contract I hadn't read. The elevator ride down felt different than the ride up. Lighter, somehow. More dangerous. My phone buzzed during lunch. A text from that same unknown number. Except now I knew exactly who it was. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., my office, bring a notebook. We have work to do. I stared at the message, thought about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. The HR violations, the power dynamics, the very real possibility that I was about to destroy my career for a woman who'd said no to my pitches without blinking. Then I thought about her shaking hand, her broken pleas, that satisfied smile on Blaine Mercer's face. I texted back one word, okay. That night, lying in my apartment, staring at the ceiling while Jace snored in the next room, I wondered what 6 a.m. would bring. What it meant to fake date your CEO. How you made something that wasn't real look convincing enough to fool a predator. I didn't sleep much. When I did, I dreamed of gray-blue eyes and expensive perfume, and the feeling of making a choice you can't take back. My alarm went off at 5 a.m. I showered, dressed carefully, business casual but not trying too hard. Left the apartment while Jace was still dead to the world. The office at 6 a.m. was a different creature. Silent, empty. Just security and the cleaning crew finishing their rounds. The lights were motion-activated, clicking on as I moved through the space. My footsteps echoed. Miranda's office door was open. She was already there, of course. Sitting at her desk with her laptop and 3 different colored pens and a leather notebook that looked expensive enough to have its own insurance policy. She'd brought coffee. 2 cups from that place on Franklin that charged $7 for a latte. She slid one across the desk to me as I sat down. We have a lot to cover. First, we need a story. How we met. When we started seeing each other. Why we kept it quiet. Every detail has to be consistent. If we're telling people different versions, we're finished before we start. I pulled out my phone to take notes. She shook her head. Handwritten only. Nothing digital. Nothing that can be traced or screenshotted or subpoenaed if this goes sideways. Right, of course. I grabbed the notebook she pushed toward me. For the next 3 hours, we built a relationship that didn't exist. The story we settled on was simple enough to remember, but detailed enough to be believable. We'd been working late together about 4 months ago. One of those nights where the office empties out and you're the only ones left. We'd ordered takeout, started talking about something other than work. Realized we had more in common than we thought. The romance developed slowly. Coffee meetings that went long. Dinners disguised as work discussions. The first kiss happened in her office after midnight when I made her laugh about something. She'd been so surprised she laughed that she'd just kissed me. After that, we couldn't stop. We kept it secret because of optics. She was the CEO, I was junior staff. We both knew how it would look. But the feelings were real, so we were careful, discreet until now. Until now, I repeated, why now, why go public? Miranda's eyes hardened. Because I'm tired of hiding. Because life's too short to let other people dictate my happiness. Because you're worth the complication. She said it like she was rehearsing, but there was something underneath the words. Something that might have been true mixed in with the fiction. Your turn. Tell me about yourself. Your life. I need to know you better than anyone in this city if we're going to sell this. So I talked. Told her about growing up in Ohio. Mid-sized town where everyone knew everyone. Dad taught history. Mom was a nurse. They were good people. Solid. They'd been proud when I got the job in Chicago, but worried I was too soft for the city. Siblings. 1 sister. Emma, she's a teacher in Columbus. Married, 2 kids, the responsible one. Miranda smiled faintly. The responsible one who became a teacher, and you're the reckless one who works in advertising. I laughed despite myself, something like that. She wrote notes in that precise handwriting. Then looked up with an expression I couldn't quite read. Tell me what you notice about me. In the office. What have you observed? I hesitated. This felt like a test. But she waited patient, so I answered honestly. You take your coffee black. No sugar. You wear the same perfume every day. Something floral but not sweet. You always arrive before 7 and leave after 8. You never eat lunch at your desk. You have a photo frame turned face down in your bottom drawer. And when you're thinking hard about something, you tap your ring finger against the desk 3 times. She stared at me, something close to surprise flickering across her features. You're observant. I'm a creative. It's my job to notice things. She made a note, then slid a slim folder across the desk. Inside were details. Her birthday, her family history, where she grew up, her favorite restaurant, wine preferences. The small facts that couples know about each other. Memorize this. We'll quiz each other until you can answer without thinking. We spent another hour drilling facts, testing each other, building the architecture of a fake relationship until the sun was fully up and the office started filling with people. Before we finished, Miranda looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite name. Serious, maybe a little scared. This starts now. The second we walk out of this office, we're a couple. That means proximity, touching, eye contact, casual intimacy. I need to know you're okay with that, really okay. I thought about her hand on my wrist, the way she'd leaned into me Friday night, the weight of what we were about to do. I'm okay with it. Are you? She stood, smoothed her skirt, became the CEO again. But when she looked at me, there was something softer underneath. I guess we'll find out. We left her office together. As we walked toward the elevator, her hand brushed mine. Just for a second. Testing. I let my pinky catch hers, the smallest connection. Someone from accounting walked past, did a double take. We kept walking like nothing had happened. The performance had begun. The next 2 weeks were an education in proximity and pretending. Miranda approached our arrangement like a military campaign, which shouldn't have surprised me. This was a woman who'd built an empire by refusing to leave anything to chance. She created a binder. An actual physical binder with tabs and printed pages. My life organized into sections like a brand strategy document. Bio, family, preferences, social circles, past relationships. Every detail a couple would naturally know about each other. We met early every morning before the office filled. Her conference room became our war room. She'd quiz me over coffee that was always exactly the right temperature. Where did I grow up? Greenwich, Connecticut. Your father was a corporate lawyer. Your mother sat on charity boards. You have a younger brother, Nathan, who works in San Francisco doing something with venture capital that you find morally questionable, but don't discuss at family dinners. She nodded. Favorite food? Anything I don't have to cook. You exist on takeout and black coffee during the week. But Sunday mornings you make French toast from scratch because your grandmother taught you, and it's the one domestic thing you allow yourself to be sentimental about. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, that I'd absorbed the details she'd written like they mattered. First concert, Dave Matthews Band when you were 16. Your father thought it was beneath you. You went anyway. It was the first time you realized you could choose something just because you wanted it. She set down her coffee, looked at me like she was recalculating something. You actually read the whole binder. You made it. Seemed rude not to. Most people would have skimmed, memorized the highlights. I'm not most people. She smiled, small, genuine. The kind of smile I was learning meant I'd surprised her in a good way. No, you're really not. The training escalated beyond facts. Miranda started teaching me how to be convincing in public, how to hold her, where to touch, the small gestures that communicated intimacy without crossing lines. She demonstrated with clinical precision. Hand at the small of my back when entering a room. Fingers brushing mine when passing something. Eye contact that lasted 3 seconds longer than professional. Leaning in when talking so our heads were close enough that others couldn't hear but could see the connection. You look terrified when I'm within 3 feet of you. Because you're my CEO. My body hasn't gotten the memo that we're supposed to be dating. She stepped closer. Close enough that I had to look down to meet her eyes. Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in that gray blue. Then we need to retrain your body. She put her hand on my chest, just rested it there over my heartbeat. My pulse jumped immediately. She felt it. I knew she felt it. Breathe. I'm not going to hurt you. I know. Do you? Because your entire nervous system just went into fight or flight. She was right. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that CEOs and junior staff didn't stand this close, that her hand on my chest was a violation of something fundamental. But underneath the panic was something else. Something that noticed how she smelled like expensive perfume, and something warmer. How her hand was steady and cool. How when she looked at me like this without the CEO mask, she was just a woman who needed help and had chosen to trust me. Better, she said quietly. Your heart rate is slowing. We practiced until I could stand next to her without my body betraying me. Until I could put my arm around her waist and make it look natural. Until the proximity stopped feeling like an invasion and started feeling like muscle memory. The office noticed immediately. We weren't hiding, but we weren't announcing either. Just small things. Her hand on my shoulder when discussing a project. Me bringing her coffee in the morning. Walking out together at lunch. The gossip started within 48 hours. I could feel the stares, hear the conversations that stopped when I approached. Jace cornered me in the break room on day 3. Dude, are you sleeping with the CEO? I gave him the rehearsed answer. We're seeing each other. It's new. We're being careful. His eyes went wide. You're serious? You're actually dating Miranda Vale. Why is that so hard to believe? Because she's the Ice Queen and you're you. I'm what? He gestured vaguely at all of me. Normal. Human. She's like a different species. I didn't think she dated. I thought she just killed men and ate their ambition for breakfast. She's a person, Jace. A complicated person, but a person. He studied me like I'd been replaced by an alien. You actually like her. I do. It was supposed to be a lie. Part of the performance. But when I said it, I realized it was true. Somewhere between the early morning binder sessions and her teaching me how to touch her without flinching, I'd started seeing Miranda Vale as more than the Steel Queen. She was funny in a dry way that caught me off guard. She remembered details about people. She worked herself to exhaustion because she believed the company deserved her best. And underneath all that armor, she was terrified of being seen as weak. Yeah, I said again, I really do. The suit fitting happened on a Thursday. Miranda insisted. Said if we were going to be seen together at client dinners and events, I needed clothes that matched the environment. She took me to a place in the West Loop that didn't have prices on anything, which meant I couldn't afford to breathe in there. The tailor was a small Italian man who spoke to fabric the way priests speak to God. He measured me in silence, occasionally making thoughtful sounds. Miranda sat in a leather chair, watching the whole thing like a director reviewing footage. The charcoal and the navy, both. The tailor nodded. Signore has good shoulders. The cut will be beautiful. 3 days, she told me as we left. They'll deliver to your apartment. Miranda. I can't afford those suits. You're not paying, I am. I stopped walking. People flowed around us on the sidewalk. This is starting to feel like Pretty Woman. She turned back, raised an eyebrow. Are you comparing yourself to Julia Roberts? I'm saying I don't need you to buy me things. This was supposed to be a favor. It is a favor. You're doing me a favor by existing in spaces where people judge you on thread count. Let me level the playing field. It's too much. Something shifted in her expression, softer. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. Ethan, I'm asking you to walk into rooms full of sharks and pretend you belong there. The suit isn't a gift, it's armor. Let me give you that much. When she put it that way, it felt less like charity and more like strategy. I nodded. She smiled, reached up and adjusted my collar even though it didn't need adjusting. The gesture was casual, intimate, exactly the kind of thing a girlfriend would do. A woman walking past did a double take, pulled out her phone. I saw Miranda clock it. She didn't react. just kept her hand on my collar for another second before stepping back. "Let them look," she said quietly. "That's the point." The suits arrived on Sunday. I tried on the charcoal in my apartment. Jace whistled from the couch. "Holy hell. You look like you have money." I look like I'm pretending to have money. Same thing in this city. He wasn't wrong. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who could stand next to Miranda Vale without looking like he'd wandered in from the wrong party. The tailor had been right. The cut was beautiful. Miranda texted that afternoon. "Dinner tomorrow. Client presentation, 8 p.m. I'll pick you up at 7:30. I stared at the message. This was it. The first real public test. Not the office where people already suspected. Not a coffee run. An actual client dinner where our relationship would be on display. I texted back, "What's the client?" "Luxury hotel group. Very traditional. Very conservative. They're deciding between us and 2 other agencies. Worth $3 million annually if we land it. So no pressure. You'll be fine. Just be yourself. They'll love you." The confidence in those words did something to my chest. Made it tight. She believed in me. Or at least she was excellent at pretending she did. She picked me up in a black car that probably cost more than my annual salary. I climbed in wearing the navy suit. She was in a dress that was somehow both professional and devastating. Deep emerald that made her eyes look almost blue. Hair down in soft waves instead of the severe bun. I forgot to breathe for a second. She noticed, smiled slightly. "You clean up well." "So do you." We rode in silence for a few blocks. Then she reached over and took my hand. Just held it. Her palm was cool and dry. Nervous, terrified. "Good. That means you care." She squeezed once. "They're just people, Ethan. Rich people with opinions, but still just people. We've prepared. You know the pitch. You know me. Just follow my lead." "What if I mess it up?" "Then we mess it up together." The restaurant was the kind of place where they take your coat like they're accepting a priceless artifact. All dark wood and low lighting and tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private. The client was already there. 3 men in suits that made mine look like a rental. They stood when we approached. Miranda handled introductions with effortless grace. "This is Ethan Brooks, our lead creative on the campaign." The possessive hour. The casual way she touched my back. She was selling it. We sat, ordered wine I couldn't pronounce. The conversation started professionally. Market analysis, brand positioning. The clients asked sharp questions. Miranda answered sharper. I watched her operate, watched her command the table without raising her voice. Then one of the clients turned to me. "And what's your vision for the campaign, Ethan?" I'd prepared for this. Miranda and I had practiced the pitch until I could deliver it in my sleep. But sitting there in that expensive restaurant with 3 pairs of eyes evaluating me, my mind went blank for a terrifying second. Then I felt Miranda's hand on my knee under the table. Steady, grounding. I started talking. The words came. The vision. The strategy. I explained how we'd position their brand not as luxury for luxury's sake, but as an experience worth remembering. How the campaign would make people feel something before they even checked a price. When I finished, the silence stretched long enough to make me sweat. Then the lead client smiled. "That's good. That's really good." Relief flooded through me. Miranda's hand squeezed my knee once. I covered her hand with mine without thinking. The client noticed, smiled wider. "How long have you 2 been together?" The question landed like a test. Miranda handled it without missing a beat. "A few months." We tried to keep it professional, but some things refused to stay in neat categories. She looked at me when she said it. The way she looked at me, I almost believed it was real. The dinner continued. Business blended with personal. They asked about us, how we met, what we did outside of work. Miranda answered with the story we'd built. I filled in details. We passed the test so smoothly I almost forgot we were performing. Then, as dessert arrived, the energy in the restaurant shifted. Miranda went rigid beside me. Her hand on her wine glass tightened until her knuckles went white. I followed her gaze. Blaine Mercer had just walked in. He wasn't alone. The woman with him looked barely 25, blonde, wearing a dress that was probably more expensive than my rent. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm with the kind of casual intimacy that was meant to be seen. Miranda's breathing changed, shallow, fast. I recognized the panic from the bar, the way her whole body prepared to either run or break. I leaned in close enough that my lips brushed her ear. Look at me. Not at him, at me. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, scared. You're the strongest person in this room. He's just a man who lost you, and these clients are watching. That last part landed. I felt her spine straighten, watched her rebuild the armor in real time. She took a breath, reached up and touched my face with her free hand. The gesture looked tender, loving, but I felt how her fingers trembled slightly. I covered her hand with mine, turned my head just enough to kiss her palm. The clients at our table noticed, smiled indulgently. Blaine noticed too. He'd been walking toward a table on the other side of the restaurant. But when he saw us, he changed direction, started moving our way with that confident stride of men who've never been told to stop. My entire body went on alert. Miranda's hand found mine under the table, gripped hard enough to hurt. He arrived at our table wearing that same satisfied smile from the bar. His date hung back uncertain. Miranda, what a surprise. His voice was silk over steel, friendly on the surface, poisonous underneath. Miranda's mask was flawless. Blaine, indeed. She didn't introduce me, didn't acknowledge him beyond the bare minimum of civility. It was a power move. Brilliant. It said he didn't matter enough for social niceties. His smile tightened. Aren't you going to introduce your companion? Before Miranda could respond, I stood, extended my hand, forced him to either shake it or be overtly rude in front of witnesses. Ethan Brooks. I'm with Miranda. The phrasing was deliberate. Not I work with, not I know. I'm with, claimed, chosen, his. He shook my hand, squeezed too hard. The primate dominance game. Blaine Mercer, old friend of Miranda's. Not that old, I said. And friend feels generous given the restraining order paperwork. Miranda's hand clenched mine. That wasn't in the script. I'd gone off book, but Blaine's smile finally cracked, just for a second. One of the clients cleared his throat. Awkward energy filled the space. Blaine realized he'd lost the room. Well, enjoy your evening. He retreated. His date looked embarrassed. They were seated across the restaurant, but I could feel him watching us, calculating, probably planning his next move. I sat back down. My heart was hammering. I'd just directly challenged a man who'd spent months psychologically torturing Miranda. A man with resources and connections and a proven willingness to destroy people. Under the table, Miranda was still holding my hand. She leaned close. Her voice was barely a whisper. That was incredibly stupid. I know. Thank you. The clients finished their desserts, complimented the pitch, told us they'd have a decision within the week. We shook hands, exchanged business cards, maintained the professional veneer. But as we walked out of the restaurant, Miranda was quiet. Too quiet. We climbed into the car. She gave the driver her address instead of mine. I should probably go home. I need you to come with me, just for a little while, please. That please again. The one that broke my heart every time. Okay. Her brownstone was in Lincoln Park. Old money neighborhood, tree-lined streets, the kind of place where you needed a trust fund just to rent. Inside was different than I'd imagined. Warmer. Books everywhere. Soft rugs. A kitchen that actually looked used. Framed photos on the mantel. This wasn't the glass and steel of her office. This was where Miranda lived when she wasn't performing. She poured wine without asking if I wanted it, handed me a glass, sat on the couch, and finally let the mask slip. He'll escalate now. You calling him out like that, he won't let it go. I know. You don't know. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me. She looked at me. Really looked. Like she was deciding whether I could handle the truth. Then she told me about the time he'd hacked her email. The time he'd sent flowers to her office with a card that said, "Miss you," but was designed to make her colleagues question her stability. The time he'd shown up at her gym at 6 a.m. and pretended it was coincidence. The way he knew things about her schedule he shouldn't know. The feeling of being constantly watched. By the time she finished, the wine was gone and her voice had gone flat. The kind of flat that comes after you've cried all your tears and only have exhaustion left. I should have stayed quiet at dinner. Should have let you handle it. She shook her head, set down her glass, turned to face me on the couch. No, you defended me. No one's done that in years. Everyone's too scared of his family, too worried about consequences. But you just did it, because he doesn't get to win. She reached out, touched my face. Her hand was warmer now from the wine. Her eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. Why are you kind to me? The question hung between us. I could have given her a safe answer, something about decency or doing the right thing. But we'd already crossed too many lines for safe answers. Because I like the real you, the one who makes French toast on Sundays, who reads 3 books at once, who's terrified of being vulnerable but does it anyway. Silence. Heavy, charged. It terrifies me too, she whispered. How easy this is with you. How much I look forward to our morning meetings. How I have to remind myself this isn't real. Miranda. She pulled back, stood abruptly, smoothed her dress even though it didn't need smoothing. You should go. It's late. This was inappropriate. I'm sorry. I stood too, moved toward the door, then stopped, turned back. For what it's worth, it feels real to me, too. I left before she could respond. Before I could do something stupid like kiss her for real instead of for show. The car ride home felt longer than it was. When I finally collapsed in my apartment, Jace was still up. How was dinner? Complicated. He waited for more. I didn't give it. My phone buzzed at midnight. Miranda. Gala next week. Bigger event. Press will be there. Blaine will definitely be there. We need to practice more. Outside of work, outside of strategy. I stared at the message. Understood what she was asking. More time together. More proximity. More chances for the line between fake and real to blur completely. I typed back. When and where? Her response came immediately. Sunday, my place. Come at noon. I'll cook. The idea of Miranda Vale cooking for me did something dangerous to my chest. Made me imagine things I had no right imagining. But I was already too deep to back out now. See you Sunday. I set down my phone, stared at my ceiling, and wondered how you were supposed to fake date someone when your feelings stopped being fake somewhere along the way. Sunday couldn't come fast enough and came too fast at the same time. Sunday arrived with that particular Chicago spring weather that tricks you into thinking winter is finally over. I stood outside Miranda's brownstone at exactly noon, holding a bottle of wine I'd spent 20 minutes selecting. The kind that cost enough to show respect, but not so much I was trying too hard. She answered the door in jeans and a cashmere sweater, bare feet, hair loose around her shoulders. No makeup except maybe something that made her eyes look even more gray-blue. I'd never seen her like this, so completely stripped of armor that I had to relearn how to breathe. You brought wine. You said you were cooking. Seemed appropriate. She smiled, took the bottle, examined the label. Good choice. Come in. Her home in daylight was even warmer than I remembered. Spring sun through the windows. Plants I hadn't noticed before. A record player in the corner with actual vinyl stacked beside it. She caught me looking, my one analog holdout. There's something about records that feels more honest than streaming. What are you listening to these days? She walked to the player, showed me the sleeve. Joni Mitchell, Blue Album. My mother used to play this when I was a kid, before she decided Joni was too melancholy for a corporate lawyer's wife to enjoy. Is that why you love it? Because she wasn't supposed to. Miranda looked at me with something close to surprise. Maybe. Or maybe I just like sad women with guitars telling the truth about being complicated. The kitchen smelled like garlic and herbs. She'd been cooking before I arrived. Actual cooking, not reheating takeout. There was flour on the counter, a cutting board with vegetables, a pot of something simmering that smelled incredible. You're making pasta from scratch. My grandmother taught me. Sunday tradition. I almost never do it anymore, but today felt like a day for traditions. She handed me a glass of wine, gestured to the cutting board. You can help. I need those tomatoes diced. We fell into an easy rhythm. Her at the stove, me at the counter. Joni Mitchell singing about California and feeling alone in crowds. The domesticity of it hit me sideways. This wasn't performance. No one was watching. It was just two people cooking together on a Sunday afternoon. She told me about her grandmother while she worked the pasta dough. How she'd been the only person in Miranda's family who encouraged her to build something instead of just marry well. How she'd died right before Miranda launched the company and never got to see what her granddaughter built. I think about her sometimes when I'm in the office. Wonder what she'd think. If she'd be proud or horrified that I work 80-hour weeks. She'd be proud. You built exactly what you said you would. How do you know? Because you're still making her pasta on Sundays even when no one's watching. Something in her expression shifted. Softened in a way I was learning meant I'd said something that mattered. She looked down at the dough in her hands, kept working it even though it was already perfect. Do you do this a lot? Say things that make people feel seen, only when they deserve it. We ate at her kitchen table instead of the formal dining room. The pasta was incredible. We talked about everything except work, childhood, ambitions, the strange loneliness of being successful in a city that measures worth in job titles and square footage. She told me about moving to Chicago at 28 with nothing but her savings and a business plan. How the first year she'd lived in a studio apartment in Wicker Park and eaten ramen most nights. How she'd pitched Vale and Company to 67 investors before someone said yes. I thought I'd be less lonely once I made it. Turns out, being at the top is the loneliest place of all. Everyone either wants something from you or they're afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. She looked at me across the table. Wine and afternoon sun making her eyes almost translucent. I know. That terrifies me more than anything. After lunch, we moved to the living room. She'd printed materials for the gala. Guest list. Likely attendees. Blaine would be there with some state senator's daughter. Press would be circulating. It was a big fundraiser for children's literacy. Black tie. High profile. We need to be more convincing than dinner. More intimate. He has to believe we're serious enough that he can't break us. What does that look like? She stood, held out her hand, like this. I took her hand. She pulled me up. Positioned us like we were dancing even though there was no music except Joni Mitchell winding down on the record player. Closer, she said quietly. If we're dancing at the gala, you can't look like you're afraid to touch me. I stepped closer, put my hand at her waist. She moved my hand lower, to the small of her back where the cashmere was soft and warm. Like that. Like you have every right. Like you've touched me 1,000 times. Her hand rested on my shoulder. We swayed slightly, even though the record had stopped. The silence felt louder than music. Your heart is racing again. So is yours. She looked up at me. We were close enough that I could see the flecks of darker blue in her irises. Close enough that if I leaned down just slightly, our lips would meet. This is dangerous, she whispered. I know. We should maintain boundaries. Keep this professional. We should. But neither of us moved. We stood there in her living room with spring light falling through the windows and something unspoken building in the space between us. The record player clicked, the mechanism resetting. The sound broke the spell. Miranda stepped back, cleared her throat, became CEO again. That was good, very convincing. We'll be fine at the gala. Right, fine. But when she looked at me, I saw the same thing I felt. The knowledge that we were lying to everyone, including ourselves. The week before the gala passed in a strange blur. Work felt different. Every interaction loaded with subtext. She'd touch my shoulder in meetings. I'd bring her coffee in the afternoon. We had an entire conversation in glances across the conference table that no one else could translate. Jace noticed. "You're different lately, lighter. Is she making you happy?" The question should have been easy to answer. Yes, this fake relationship with my CEO is making me happy. Instead, I just said, yeah, she is. The morning of the gala. Miranda texted me. "Picking you up at 7. Wear the charcoal suit. And Ethan, thank you for all of this." I stared at that last line for too long, trying to decode what it meant. Gratitude, affection. A warning that tonight would change things. The car arrived at exactly 7. I climbed in wearing the charcoal suit and a tie I'd practiced knotting 6 times. Miranda was already inside. When I saw her, every coherent thought evacuated my brain. The dress was crimson, floor length, cut to suggest rather than reveal. Her hair was up, but softer than the severe office bun. Loose pieces framing her face, makeup that made her eyes look luminous. She looked like power and vulnerability wrapped in silk. "You're staring. You're stunning." She smiled, nervous. I'd never seen Miranda Vale nervous before. It made her more human, more real. "So are you. The suit looks good." The drive to the venue felt too short. We went over the plan one more time. Stay close. Project confidence. If Blaine approaches, stay calm. Let me handle him unless he crosses a line. We'd know the line when we saw it. The hotel ballroom was everything I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers. Orchestra playing something classical. People in tuxedos and gowns drinking champagne and networking with the intensity of sharks circling. Flashbulbs from photographers capturing arrivals. We walked in together. Her hand on my arm. I felt every eye track us. Felt the whispers start like wildfire. The Steel Queen had brought a date, a junior employee. The scandal was delicious. She handled it with grace. Introduced me to board members and clients and donors with her hand never leaving my arm. "This is Ethan Brooks. He's very important to me." The phrasing deliberate. Not my employee, not my colleague. Important to me. We found our table, sat with some of her industry contacts who asked polite questions and tried not to obviously gossip. Miranda was brilliant, charming. She made people feel important while revealing nothing substantial. I watched her work the room and understood how she'd built an empire. She was magnetic. Halfway through dinner, I felt her ghost still beside me. That particular stillness that meant danger. I followed her gaze. Blaine had arrived. He looked every inch the wealthy predator. Tuxedo that probably cost 5 figures. His date was young, beautiful, uncomfortable. She kept touching her dress like it didn't quite fit right. Like she'd been dressed for this occasion by someone else. He saw us immediately. That satisfied smile spreading across his face. He said something to his date. She looked confused. Then he started walking toward our table. Miranda's hand found mine under the table, gripped hard. "Here we go," she breathed. He arrived with that same false friendliness from the restaurant. "Miranda, you look lovely." And Ethan was it still together, I see. How? Persistent. The word dripped with insinuation, suggesting I was clinging, suggesting she was settling. Miranda started to respond, but Blaine cut her off, turned his attention to the table at large, raised his voice just enough to carry. "It's wonderful seeing Miranda happy. She works so hard. I used to worry she'd never find someone willing to accept how demanding she can be, how cold. But I suppose some men have lower standards than others." The table went silent. Someone gasped quietly. It was a surgical strike, public enough to humiliate but phrased as concern. Plausible deniability wrapped around a knife. I felt Miranda trembling beside me, felt her preparing to either flee or shatter. Saw Blaine's smile widen as he watched her struggle. Something in me snapped. I stood, slow, deliberate. Stepped close enough to Blaine that he had to look up slightly to meet my eyes. My voice came out calm, controlled, but everyone at the nearby tables could hear. "You lost the best thing that ever happened to you. And now you're embarrassing yourself in public because you can't stand that she's happy, that she chose someone else, that she's everything you said she couldn't be. Successful and warm and loved. You had your chance. You wasted it. And now you're just a man making a scene at a charity gala because your ego can't handle rejection." Blaine's face went red. His date looked mortified. The entire table was staring. I turned back to Miranda, held out my hand. "Would you like to dance?" She looked at me with something close to awe, took my hand. Let me lead her to the dance floor as Blaine stood there with his smile finally completely gone. The orchestra was playing something slow. I pulled Miranda close. She was shaking, not from fear this time, from relief or rage or something bigger than both. "That was incredibly stupid," she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm learning stupid is my specialty around you." She laughed. The sound surprised both of us. Then she pulled back just enough to look at me. We were dancing now, her hand in mine, my arm around her waist, the whole ballroom watching. "This isn't fake anymore," she said quietly. "Is it?" It wasn't a question. We both knew the answer. "No, it's not." The song ended. Another began. We kept dancing. Somewhere in the crowd, I saw Blaine leaving early with his confused date. Saw the photographers capturing us. Saw the smiles from people who were rooting for this impossible thing. When the dancing finally ended, when the night started winding down, Miranda leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Come home with me." Not a command, not strategy, just want. We left together. The car ride was quiet, charged. Her hand found mine in the darkness. Held on. Inside her brownstone, away from cameras and audiences and performance, she turned to me in the soft lamplight of her living room. "I need to know this is real. That you're not just being kind. That you actually feel this too. I've felt it since you taught me how to touch you without flinching. Maybe before that. Maybe since you trusted me enough to ask for help." She stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel her breathing. Close enough that the space between us became impossible. Then, kiss me. For real this time, not for show. I did. The kiss was nothing like the practiced one at the restaurant. This was desperate. Real. Months of proximity and pretending and dancing around something we both felt but couldn't name, her hands in my hair. My hands on her waist, the world narrowing to just this moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she pressed her forehead to mine. "Stay tonight, just stay." I stayed. Morning came too fast and too slow. I woke up in her bed with spring sunlight filtering through expensive curtains. Miranda was already awake, sitting up against the headboard with her hair loose and wearing one of my shirts from the night before. She handed me coffee. Black, no sugar, because she'd memorized how I took it. "We need to talk about this." "I know. Monday we disclose to HR. Make it official. There will be consequences. Investigations. Maybe restructuring. But we do it right. No more lies, no more performance." I sat up, took the coffee, looked at this woman who'd somehow become everything without me noticing until it was too late. "You sure we could keep pretending? Keep it secret? Avoid the complications?" She shook her head. I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting fear make decisions. If we're doing this, we do it honestly. Then we do it honestly. She smiled, leaned over and kissed me softly. It still felt like miracle, like something I hadn't earned but was being given anyway. We spent the morning in her brownstone, made breakfast together, talked about how to handle the disclosure, what to say, how to frame it. She was strategic even in vulnerability. It was part of what I loved about her. We agreed on Monday at 9, a meeting with HR. Full transparency. Let the consequences come. I left her place around noon. Floated home in an Uber feeling like the world had rearranged itself overnight, like I'd woken up in a different life. Jace took one look at me. Oh no, you're in love with her. Maybe. Not maybe. Definitely. You look like someone who just figured out they're screwed. He wasn't wrong. Monday morning I woke up early, showered, dressed in the navy suit, tried to prepare for whatever came next. Miranda had texted the night before. Meeting scheduled, 9 a.m., HR conference room. I'll see you there. I got to the office at 8. Needed coffee. Needed to settle my nerves. Needed to remember why this was worth whatever came next. Jace was waiting by my desk. He looked pale. Held his laptop like it contained evidence of a crime. Dude, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward me. Showed me an email forwarded from someone he knew in HR. The email had been sent to the entire board. Anonymous sender. Professional language that barely concealed malice. Subject line: inappropriate relationship requiring board review. The body text laid it out coldly. CEO and subordinate. Power imbalance. Potential coercion. Attached evidence. I scrolled down to the attachments. Felt my stomach drop through the floor. Photos. Professional quality. Us at the gala, dancing. My hand on her back. Her face tilted up toward mine. Another photo of us leaving together, hand in hand. Another of us outside her brownstone. The kiss on her doorstep. Time-stamped, geotagged, irrefutable. Someone had hired a photographer. Had followed us. Had documented everything and sent it to the board with language designed to make it look as bad as possible. When was this sent? Last night. Around midnight. HR is scrambling. Board called an emergency meeting. This is bad, man. Really bad. My phone buzzed. Miranda. Don't come to my office. Don't react. Don't talk to anyone. Conference room B, 9:45. Lawyer and HR will be there. This is serious. I looked at Jace. His face was full of sympathy and worry. I'm sorry. I know this is real. I know you actually love her. But this is going to get ugly. He was right. Someone had weaponized our relationship, turned something real into ammunition, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who. Blaine Mercer was done playing games. Now he was playing for blood. The hours between seeing those photos and the 9:45 meeting felt like living underwater. Every sound muffled, every movement slow. I sat at my desk pretending to work while my brain ran disaster scenarios on loop. At 9:30, I walked to conference room B like I was walking to sentencing. The room was on the executive floor. Glass walls. No privacy. Everyone would be able to see us in there getting interrogated. Miranda was already inside. She'd dressed for battle. Black suit. Hair pulled back so severely it looked painful. No softness anywhere. The steel queen armor fully deployed. But when our eyes met through the glass, I saw fear underneath. I walked in, closed the door. The sound felt final. She didn't speak immediately, just looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Then she gestured to the chair beside hers at the conference table. Sit. We have 15 minutes before they arrive. We need to decide our strategy. On the table between us was a legal pad covered in her precise handwriting. Notes, bullet points, the architecture of our defense. I've been up since 3 a.m. thinking through scenarios. The photos are damning. Anonymous email means we can't prove who sent it, though we both know. It tried to trace it, dead end. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Blaine has money for that kind of professional operation. She nodded. The lawyer will advise us to admit nothing, to claim it's a private matter, but that looks like we're hiding something worse. HR will push on timeline, when it started, whether there was coercion, whether I've shown you favoritism. Have you? She looked at me sharply, then honest. I've been harder on you than anyone else, deliberately, to avoid exactly this accusation. Your pitches get rejected more than they should. I've kept you at arm's length professionally to protect us both. I hadn't known that. The information landed with strange weight. All those rejections, all that distance. It had been protection. So we tell them that, we tell them everything. She shook her head. Everything, Ethan, if we tell them the beginning, if we explain Friday night at the bar, if we admit the fake dating arrangement, we look calculated. We look like we orchestrated a scheme. That's worse than a spontaneous relationship. Is it, or is honesty our only clean weapon? She stared at the legal pad, at all her carefully constructed strategies. Then she set down her pen and looked at me with something close to desperation. If we're honest about the beginning, I have to admit, I approached you inappropriately. That I used the threat of firing you to coerce your help. That everything that came after was built on that foundation. My career ends. Probably yours, too. But if we lie now and they find out later, it's infinitely worse. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed. Short, bitter. You're right. God help us, you're right. Honesty is the only move that doesn't make us look like schemers. So we tell them. The panic attack at the bar, the apology, the arrangement, how it became real, all of it. She reached across the table, took my hand. Her palm was ice cold. This could destroy everything I've built. 20 years of work. Gone because I made one desperate choice on a Friday night. Or it proves you're human. That you made a mistake and handled it with integrity. That you fell in love honestly, even if it started unconventionally. She squeezed my hand once, then let go as footsteps approached outside. They arrived as a unit. 5 board members, including Dana Holloway, the one Miranda had mentioned as an ally. The HR director, a woman named Patricia Chen, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. And the company lawyer Thomas Brecht, who entered with the expression of someone about to perform surgery without anesthesia. They sat across from us, a line of judgment. Patricia opened a folder, slid copies of the photos across the table. These were sent to the board and senior leadership last night. Anonymous email. We need to understand what we're looking at. Miranda's voice came out level, controlled. A romantic relationship between Ethan Brooks and myself. We were planning to disclose this morning, before these photos arrived. Thomas leaned forward. Planning to disclose, meaning you've been concealing it for how long? Miranda glanced at me, a question in her eyes. I nodded slightly. Go ahead. Truth. She took a breath. Then she told them everything. Every uncomfortable detail. The panic at the bar, the whispered threat that wasn't a threat, the apology Monday morning, the arrangement we'd made, how we'd built a fake relationship to deal with her ex-fiancé's harassment, how somewhere in the performance it became real. The room was silent when she finished. Patricia's expression had shifted from skeptical to something almost sympathetic. Thomas looked like she'd just confessed to embezzlement. The board members were harder to read. One of them, Gerald Morrison, spoke first. His voice was cold. So you coerced a junior employee into a fake relationship to deal with your personal problems. And now you're claiming it's real. Convenient timing. Miranda's jaw tightened. I didn't coerce him. I offered him every exit, multiple times. He stayed by choice. That's what I want to hear about. Gerald turned his attention to me. Mr. Brooks, in your own words, Did you feel pressured to participate in this arrangement? Every eye in the room fixed on me. This was the moment. I could destroy her right now, claim coercion, play the victim, probably walk away with a settlement and my career intact. I looked at Miranda, at the woman who trusted me with her vulnerability, who taught me how to be brave, who'd fallen in love with me while thinking she was just performing. No, I felt asked, there's a difference. She explained the situation, offered me complete control, told me I could walk away any time without consequences. She was harder on me professionally than anyone else, specifically to avoid favoritism accusations. If anything, being in a relationship with her hurt my career prospects. Thomas jumped in. Yet, you participated. Why? What did you gain? The chance to help someone who needed it. The chance to get to know a remarkable woman. And eventually, the chance to fall in love honestly, even if the beginning was unconventional. Dana Holloway spoke for the first time. Her voice was measured, thoughtful. I've known Miranda for 15 years, watched her build this company through sheer will and brilliant strategy. This sounds more like a crisis management error than malicious coercion. The question is whether we treat this as a scandal or as a policy matter. Thomas shook his head. There's clear power imbalance, CEO and subordinate. The optics alone are damaging. We need to consider termination or forced resignation to protect the company. From what Dana's voice sharpened. From a relationship between two consenting adults who made an unconventional choice, male executives have dated employees for decades without board intervention. Are we applying a different standard because Miranda's a woman? That landed hard. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Gerald looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find clean ground. Another board member. Sarah Chen spoke up. What about the harassment from the ex-fiancé? Has that been documented? Can it be verified? Miranda pulled out her phone, showed them text messages, emails, photos of Blaine showing up at her gym, her restaurants, her events. A pattern of behavior spanning 9 months. It was damning in a different way. Evidence that she'd been under siege and had made a desperate choice. Sarah studied the evidence, then looked at Thomas. This seems like a woman dealing with stalking behavior who made a judgment error in how she sought help, not a predator abusing power. The room divided along those lines. Some saw scandal, others saw context. They debated for 20 minutes while Miranda and I sat silent, watching our fates decided by committee. Finally, Patricia held up a hand. Here's what I propose. No disciplinary action, but mandatory restructuring. Ethan moves to a different reporting line. No direct supervision. 6-month monitoring period. Both of you sign documentation acknowledging the policy violation and agreeing to the new structure. We treat this as an HR matter, not a scandal. Make it boring. Dana nodded immediately. That's sensible. Sets precedent without destroying careers. Anyone opposed? Gerald looked like he wanted to fight. But Sarah and 2 other board members sided with Dana. The vote was 4-1. Patricia's proposal carried. Thomas closed his folder. You're both very lucky. This could have gone much worse. The restructuring takes effect immediately. Ethan, you'll report to Marcus Davis going forward. Miranda, you're on notice. Any hint of favoritism, any appearance of impropriety, and this gets revisited. Understood. We both nodded. The meeting ended. They filed out, leaving us alone in that glass conference room with half the office pretending not to stare. Miranda turned to me. Her face was carefully neutral, but I could see the relief underneath. We survived. Barely. She almost smiled. Barely counts. But survival came with a cost that revealed itself slowly over the following weeks. The office changed. People who'd been friendly became distant. Conversations stopped when I approached. Someone wrote "gold digger" on the bathroom mirror in the men's room. Took facilities 3 days to clean it completely. Marcus Davis, my new supervisor, was professional but cold. Made it clear he didn't appreciate being given the CEO's boyfriend as a report. My pitch ideas sat in review limbo. Projects I'd been working on got reassigned without explanation. The clients noticed too. One major account specifically requested I be removed from their team. Didn't give a reason. Didn't need to. The message was clear. I'd become a liability. Miranda had it worse. A trade publication ran a barely veiled article about workplace relationships and power dynamics. Never named her directly, didn't need to. Everyone in Chicago's advertising community knew exactly who they meant. Her professional reputation, built over 20 years, was being quietly dismantled in conference rooms and over lunch meetings she wasn't invited to. We'd known there would be consequences, but knowing intellectually and living through it were different things. I watched her rebuild her armor thicker than before, watched her work longer hours, stay later, arrive earlier, like she could outrun the gossip through sheer productivity. 3 weeks after the board meeting, she called me. Not texted, actually called. Her voice sounded wrong, tight, strained. "Can you come over tonight? I just need you here. I was there in 20 minutes. She answered the door still in her work clothes, hair starting to escape the severe bun, makeup smudged at the corners like she'd been rubbing her eyes. The armor was cracking. Inside, she poured wine with shaking hands. Didn't speak, just handed me a glass and stared out her living room windows at the Chicago skyline like it had personally betrayed her. I lost the Meridian account today. They're switching agencies. $8 million annually. Gone. I'm sorry. They didn't say why. They don't have to. But I know. Everyone knows. I'm toxic now. The CEO who slept with her employee. Never mind that male executives do it constantly. Never mind that we disclosed. Never mind that we followed every policy. I'm the cautionary tale. Her voice was getting tighter, higher, like she was holding back something that wanted to break. 20 years. I've given this company 20 years. Sacrificed relationships. Sacrificed having kids. Sacrificed every soft thing about myself to be hard enough to survive in this industry. And now they're taking it away because I made one human choice. Because I was scared and asked for help and fell in love like that's somehow criminal. The last word broke. Her voice shattered completely. She set down the wine glass hard enough that I thought it might crack, pressed her hands over her face, and finally let herself fall apart. The sound she made was agonizing. Years of held tears. Years of being the steel queen when she wanted to be human. Years of carrying weight no one acknowledged because she'd made it look easy. It poured out of her in waves. I didn't try to fix it. Didn't tell her it would be okay. Just pulled her close and held on while she sobbed against my chest. Let her ruin my shirt. Let her be completely, catastrophically broken without trying to put her back together. When she finally quieted, when the tears slowed to exhausted breathing, she pulled back just enough to look at me. Her face was blotchy. Makeup destroyed. Eyes red and swollen. She looked more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. I'm sorry, that was unprofessional. Miranda, you're allowed to break. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be human. She laughed wetly. Bitter. I built my entire career on not being allowed those things. Then maybe it's time to build something different. She looked at me like I'd suggested something radical, which I suppose I had. The next day she called in sick for the first time in 7 years. We drove north out of Chicago toward a lake cabin her grandmother had left her in Michigan, the kind of place that didn't have Wi-Fi or cell service. Just water and trees and silence. We spent 3 days there. She cried more. Not the catastrophic breakdown, but quieter tears that came unexpectedly. In the morning, over coffee. At night, by the fireplace. Like she was slowly releasing years of pressure one moment at a time. We talked about everything. About what she wanted versus what she thought she should want. about whether the company she'd built was worth the cost she was paying, about love and ambition, and whether you could have both without destroying yourself. On the third night, sitting by the fire while rain hammered the windows, she turned to me with an expression I'd never seen. Completely open. Completely vulnerable. I love you. 3 words. Simple. Enormous. They hung in the air like a declaration of war against everything she'd taught herself about emotional control. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the relief was physical. Say it again. She smiled. Actually smiled. The real one that transformed her entire face. I love you, Ethan Brooks. I love that you see me, that you let me be scared, that you defended me when you had no reason to. I love you so much it terrifies me. I pulled her close. Kissed her like we had all the time in the world. When I pulled back, I said the thing I'd been holding for months. I love you too. The real you. Not the CEO. Not the performance. The woman who makes French toast and cries during Joni Mitchell and works too hard because she thinks she has to earn her place in the world. That woman, I love her completely. She pressed her forehead to mine. The fire crackled. Rain kept falling. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she looked at peace. We drove back to Chicago, different than when we'd left. Not fixed, not solved, but more honest about the weight we were carrying and the choice to carry it together. The office slowly stabilized. The gossip died down to background noise. My work under Marcus was competent, if not inspired. Miranda rebuilt her client relationships one meeting at a time. Some accounts came back. Others didn't. The company survived, so did we. 6 months passed, then 8. The scandal became old news. Something that happened once to people who were still around. The restructuring held. The policies were followed. We proved we could separate personal from professional even when it was complicated. One Friday evening in early fall, Miranda texted me, "Meet me at that bar in River North, the one where this started." 7 p.m. I arrived to find her already there. But she looked different than that first night. Hair down, jeans, and a sweater instead of her work armor. Real smile instead of terror. She was sitting at the bar drinking something clear. Not whiskey, not wine, just water with lime. I slid onto the stool beside her. Hi yourself. She turned to face me fully. Thank you for coming. Always. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small velvet box. My heart did something complicated in my chest. This isn't a proposal. Not yet. Not ready for that. But I wanted you to have something. Proof that I'm thinking in forever terms, even if I'm scared. She opened the box. Inside were 2 simple bands. Platinum. Elegant, no stones, just metal that meant something. Matching rings. For both of us. You wear yours, I wear mine. Not engagement, not marriage, just proof that we chose this, that we're choosing it every day. I took one of the bands, slid it on. Perfect fit. Of course she'd gotten my size exactly right. She put hers on too. Held up her hand so the metal caught the light. I want all of it, I told her. The complications, the office gossip, the hard conversations, the crying by fireplaces, the French toast Sundays, all of it. She leaned close enough that I could smell her perfume. The same expensive floral she'd worn that first night. But now it meant something different. Meant home. Take me home, she said softly. But this time, not a threat. Not a command. Not even a request. Just an invitation. A choice. A beginning. I stood, held out my hand, always. We walked out of that bar, hand in hand, into the Chicago night. The same city that had witnessed our beginning. The same streets we'd navigated separately before we learned to navigate together. Behind us, the bar kept its Friday night chaos. People laughing and drinking and telling their own stories. Maybe some of them were desperate too. Maybe some were about to make choices that would change everything. But that was their story. This one was ours. and we were just getting started.